logging in this morning. You got Rod Crandall here. I'm down in Chicago today. It looks like a beautiful day out, but it's very cold, very windy. We've got a lot of snow. All very strange times that we're living in at the moment. I want to start with just a couple of housekeeping items. If all of you could please mute your own line. Please don't put us on hold so we don't get any hold music. If you mute your line, then that keeps me from having to mute the entire team. If you could do that, I'd really appreciate it. We're going to spend the next 45 minutes to an hour together this morning, really talking about, what it means to lead together through these unprecedented times. I don't have to tell any of you that. I want to share with you a little bit about how we're viewing this at the insurance agency, how I might view it personally. I am going to be joined today by George Steele in our office, Andrew Filius, and also Philip Simonson. In a little while, I will open up for comments, questions. Really would love to hear from you guys relative to what you're doing in this time, because we really don't want to find ourselves frozen, right? So while I'm prepared to lead us, and hopefully I'll do a good job doing that, certainly I love to have participation. At the end of the day, truly this call is for you. So we want to make sure that we get you what you need at 4. So please participate as we open up the line in the future. So if you're like me, what you've seen is everything, you've just been bombarded with information. Everyone wants you to hop on a webinar. Thank you for hopping on this one. And there's this sea of info on what do we do. And I came across the Scary Times Success Manual by Dan Sullivan. I actually have a PDF. We'll get it out to you after the call. In my opinion, this is the single best thing that I've seen relative to what we have going on. And Dan Sullivan was asked to put together this manual after September 11th. And it's really resonated with me. And I've talked about it a lot with our internal team. I've talked about it with friends. I've talked about it with a number of advisors. In my opinion, this tells us exactly where we are, even in normal. As we walk through these together and we understand what it means to lead here, you could almost sum it up as, do we want to be a victim or do we want to be a victor? My mom, who's deceased now, she asked me one thing routinely: what are you going to do? Certainly none of us could have foreseen what was happening. None of us have any control over what's happening, but what can we? So I want to walk through this, set the stage a little bit for what I think this really is. So number one on this list, forget about yourself and focus on others. What I find is that if we're focused on ourselves, we're often afraid. We might be shrinking, possibly in the corner, out of work, right? When we're really focusing on others, that really gives us the permission to take action, to demonstrate love, demonstrate leadership by focusing on others. If you guys wouldn't mind muting your lines, please. I hear a little bit of background noise. You could all mute yourself if you haven't already. Appreciate that. And so by focusing on others, we also get to demonstrate the Platinum Rule, which many of you have heard me talk about, and I certainly try to live by every day. The Platinum Rule is, to the extent that I can understand and meet your needs, then my needs are all. So number 2, forget about your commodity and focus on your relation. Well, at the end of the day, everybody on the phone has to effectively sell something in order to earn, right? And of course, selling something in this environment can be challenging, and maybe there's less being sold. So we need to focus on our relationships. How are you doing? How can I help you? What resources can I help? So it isn't necessarily about selling, it's about being a resource for your relationship. Now, number 3, again, another way to say that, forget about the sale, but focus on creating value. There's tremendous value, in my opinion, in leadership. I think that people are attracted to leadership. They expect it. I know we have great leaders on the phone, but it can be hard to lead if we're afraid, which is part of why we have to determine what we can control, what we can influence, and what we have neither control nor influence on. I've heard that from Philip. I think about that every single day, and that's in part what we're talking about here. The next one is forget about your losses, focus on your opportunity. Listen, everyone on this call has experienced some loss already, and candidly, we're likely going to have some loss in the future in a number of ways. but what opportunities are created? Because in these types of times, there's a number of opportunities that are created. I happen to believe that relative to insurance plans, when this thing is all cleared up, whatever that means, I believe we're going to find ourselves in the single best environment for insurance planning that I've seen in my 20-year career. And I really believe that because, number one, the denial piece is coming down. A lot of people, including myself, think nothing bad can happen. Well, guess what? I think a lot of people are understanding that it can. Secondly, our advisor class, all of you, once again, we do have a reduction in revenue, and we even see margin shrink. So more important than ever to increase additional revenue to the bottom line. Number three, insurance companies are being forced, in my opinion, to catapult into doing business on an easier basis. Now, I don't believe that insurance planning is going to become easy, but I do believe it's going to become easier, and it is becoming easier as we speak, and I'm going to share. And then finally, no matter which way we slice it, in my opinion, taxes are going to go up, especially for our best clients. And when taxes go up on our best clients, the need for insurance planning goes up dramatically, because some of our biggest and best cases, if we're being somewhat generic, come from the idea of accepting insurance costs in exchange for tax deferral or tax avoidance. So where are our opportunities? This next one's hard for me. Forget about your difficulties and focus on your progress, right? I feel like I'm running in place a lot. And so I'm as busy as I was before, but I have more frustration. And then it gets me more frustrated. I say, well, listen, what if I want to focus on progress, focus on my relationship, focus on demonstrating value, etc. Now we move on to the last, 10 of them. Forget about the future and focus on today. Well, I'm a planner, and you guys are too, so we're always looking out in the future, and we need to, but it's kind of a trap right now because we don't know what the future will hold. And it's hard to look out a year. It's hard to look out a month. Sometimes we might be looking out a week or a day. But what can we do today, right? Getting on this call is one thing we can do today. Go calling 5 of our clients today, learning about a new process. No matter what we do, it's really my belief that we have to do it with intention. If we're going to do something different than we did before, we have to do it with intention. It doesn't just happen. And we're going to talk a little bit more. Forget about who you were and focus on who you can be. Listen, I know I'm changed, and I'm sure all of you are changed, and we don't even know how we're changed, right? So I heard someone call this great pause. Well, I like that. You know, the pause didn't go from 100 to 1, might have went from 100 to 90, but now there's a little bit of time to go, okay, well, who do I want to be? What kind of practice do I want to have? What kind of leader do I? Right? Then we move into forget about what's missing and focus on what's available. Again, this one challenges me because everything just takes more time, right? And so it's more clunky in my work. But what's available? Well, what I think is available is moving into the single best environment for insurance planning in my 20-year career. Really, really. And then finally, here's the trump card for life, in my opinion. Forget about your complaints, focus on your gratitude. At the very end of the day, there's a lot of things that I could complain about, and I could sit here and make a big list, and I could be justified in why I'm complaining about those things and what that frustration. But if I do that, then that puts me in a victim side of the playing field, and I want to be a victor. And that victor for me is focusing on gratitude and things like I'm not furloughed. Even though things are more difficult, I can work from home. I already work. Technology is amazing. I mean, just the fact that we can have this webinar right is something that I'm very thankful for. So hope you guys don't feel that I'm painting that too thick, but in my opinion, this level sets everything. Okay, so we got to level set what we're doing. People need leadership, and we need to take action and make sure that we do not get frozen. So if we set it up that way, then the question is, are we going to just deal with things like we've always done? Right? If you always do what you always done, you'll always get what you always do. Right? That's that definition. I think many of you might have heard me share. Guys, one more time, if you wouldn't mind muting your call on your side, I'd really appreciate that. I am getting some background. So appreciate it. Some of you have heard me share that I've got a friend who's a clinical psychologist. And what he tells me, and he deals with change, behavioral. And, you know, Philip, by the way, talks about touching the heart before you touch the mind. I think part of that is inside of it. But people respect wisdom but obey pain. And the wisdom is we ought to do some insurance. Respectfully, I believe every one of you on the call knows that you ought to do some insurance. Some of you are doing it, right? But then we're obeying pain because guess what? Doing insurance planning creates pain. Gets conversations we might not want to get into, makes us vulnerable where we may not want to be vulnerable. It exposes us to the underwriting process, which can go awry and could possibly create problems and even relationship issues with the client. So what we have to do is we have to understand where that pain is, figure out how to minimize it, but understand what the benefit is. And the real benefit of doing wonderful insurance planning is multi-faceted. Right? First of all, it really is doing the best thing for the client and fulfilling the financial. It does drive additional revenue to your practices, and by the way, significant revenue. I know many of you are aware. Can actually keep competition aware, as Philip likes to call it, the competitive immunity. To never forget that your clients are other people's prospects. Right? You can also demonstrate fiduciary care. Candidly, I don't know how we can demonstrate fiduciary care if we haven't had an insurance planning conversation. So the net result of all of this is that if we want different results, we have to do something different, and change is hard. So as we think about this, we want to think about, well, what incremental changes can I make on purpose and with intention to be able to bring this into our overall? So some of you may have seen a Forbes article that was put out on March 12th of this year. They had some interesting statistics that don't surprise me, and it goes back to that idea of, I think clients are breaking their denial, something bad. Fabric's an online company. They reported a 50% increase in apps mid-February. Life Quote's another 29%. So I don't know if you're seeing this. I actually had a couple people in my network reach out to me to want to put insurance plans together. I know a lot of you are dealing with the volatility in the market, so I completely get that. But again, if we ask our client, you might be surprised that they do want to review these. And we're going to give you some strategy in a minute on starting point to be able to make. So I'm going to go through with you 3 different ideas, right? The first of which is what we call the Gift of Answers worksheet. I'm going to walk you through. The second is a very generic, candidly, life insurance fact. But you can't really get agreement for somebody to implement insurance without getting agreement on how much insurance. So I'm going to walk you through that. And then we're going to share 3 different programs that are occurring right now that are making business, they're making underwriting a little bit easier using accelerated and simplified issue type structure. And so we're going to walk through those together as well. Then I'm going to open up a little bit to find out who else has something that they can suggest working, conversations that they're having, how they're demonstrating leadership, how they're maybe employing a business plan for who they're going to be in the next 12 months, the next 3 years. So the Gift of Answers worksheet, big picture, is a very great conversation. And again, I'm going to show you that, right? And the need for insurance becomes really apparent. You're also able to more easily identify perhaps outside assets, especially those that are in savings accounts. So there's many reasons to do this. In fact, another reason would be to find potential referral sources. So I'm going to show you what I mean out of this and into this Gift of Answers. So we call it the Gift of Answers. It's really a sheet by print, right? It's a planning guide, 20 pages long. Okay, but again, this would be a wonderful place to start. They call it taking the worry out of your life, right? And so it's really a worksheet. It's designed to be a central location, right? So that we can put our fingers on any, that proverbial lockbox, if you will, or that goal file that we can go. And so again, it's broken down here in essential documents, contacts, final arrangements, and then there's a survivor check. Again, this is a really cool tool. So effectively, what this is telling us, let's just go here. First thing is healthcare, right? Well, I heard anecdotally, actually 2 times in the last 2 weeks, that we have individuals that are ill today in the hospital and need a power of attorney, don't have one, and the court's closed. So that can be a really big problem. And while it's not our job as advisors specifically to make sure these things are in place, certainly not drafting the documents as we're not attorneys, the reality is from a planning standpoint, our job is to really help our clients get the answers that they need when they need them. And I'll tell you that the 2 anecdotal situations I have, they didn't have those. It's a terrible time and the courts are closed. So this is a potential issue. So talking about providing value to your client, by the way, without asking them to buy anything, you're going to see that this isn't about buying anything. This is about getting them thinking, getting them organized, right? And then asking them, how are they going to fund these? So the first thing is, what are we doing for powers of attorney? The next thing is the important contacts in a state industry. Right? Remember, this is sort of set up for the heirs after the person has been deceased. But look at what can happen if your client comes in and names their attorney and their accountant. Maybe they have an insurance agent. Maybe they have an executor, beneficiaries, trustees. These 3, executors, beneficiaries, and trustees, those are huge identifiers for potential referral sources, right? These are people that they care about and trust dramatically. I noticed that, your executor is your sister, Sally. Let me ask you, would it be beneficial for me to be introduced to Sally to make sure that she has the answer she needs as well? So that's just a sort of a tip process. If we keep moving down here, then we go into important numbers. Well, where are our checkings and savings? See, I happen to believe and have seen anecdotally that our clients have a lot of money in checking and savings that maybe we don't know about or they don't tell us. This is an organization document, and if we see that, we may be able to identify funding sources for some insurance plans, right? And especially those lazy assets. And that's a completely different topic to talk about what lazy assets really mean, but just understand that we're identifying accounts that you may not be aware of. Then we move into insurance policies. What do you have in place and what is available? And we can see that this list goes down all the way into P&C, et cetera. Remember, it's an organization piece, and then it's also almost a talk track. Tell me about that, and how do you feel about that? And when was the last time you had these things reviewed? And would you like me to take a look or make an introduction for you? What I want you to hear is it's an easier way to get into the conversation. You certainly don't want to go to the client and say, hey, do you want to talk about insurance? Hey, would you like to buy some more insurance? Hey, you need more insurance. All of those things may be true, and some people might take action, but I really believe that they don't want what the insurance is, they want what it does. And what it does is provide the answers they need for themselves, for their families. So as we move down into here, then it continues, right? What do we have in stocks and bonds and mutual funds? And hopefully all the answers here you already know. And if you don't, again, maybe there's an old 401k somewhere that they didn't tell you about or they forgot about. And now it's listed here in an inventory, and you can say, tell me about that plan. Oh, that's at your old employer. Should we consider rolling that over? So you can see that this can be a starting point to really roll out various plans. What about memberships and organizations that they work with and are important to them? Well, there's a couple of things there, right? We might be able to ask them, to what degree does their legacy, do they want their legacy to go to the church, for example, or an organization there? There may be insurance planning opportunities because of their charitable information. But guess what? It can also be an identifier for prospects, right? You're very involved in your church. I can see that. Would it be beneficial for me to be introduced to any of your friends at that church so that we can steward a process for them to make sure that they have the you're sensing a trend. Information about a safe deposit box. Honestly, I don't know if people still have these safety. Suppose they do. I don't, but I guess maybe I need it. Final arrangement. Now I'll tell you. My mom passed away about 2 years ago, and I know many on the call have heard me talk. What I found there, that's how I knew so clearly that we needed. And one of the answers that we didn't have for my mom, and she passed away 58 years old. Part of the issue is we didn't know what mom wanted in her arrangement. And this was very hard on her, very hard, because we had to make decisions based on assumptions of what we thought. So let me give you some examples. Number one, we buried my mom, and I believe she wanted to be be buried. But I don't know that to be true. She might have wanted to be cremated, and she's not. We didn't ask her. She didn't put it down. And so we buried her. I hope that's fine. Right? The hardest part was determining what to put her in a casket, to be very honest. What outfit does she want? That was hard. We had to vote. The worst thing about my mom's death was she did not have powers of attorney. And she had an accidental drowning. And she was revived and kept alive on life. And literally our family had to vote to take her off life because she didn't have her wishes down. I'm not mad at her. And by the way, as one of her advisors, we did introduce them to an estate planning attorney. They started the process, but never ended. I don't feel tremendous guilt about that. I really don't. But by the same token, I put my family at a disadvantage by not having. Now, the last thing I want you to know about that power of attorney for my mom was taking her off life support when we voted on that. It wasn't unanimous. We took a family vote and not everybody agreed. So I don't have to tell you that that's not good. And you can imagine what kind of strife that might have created in the family. Why? Because we didn't have the answer. And while I wouldn't say that you as a wealth advisor, it's absolutely your job to make sure these answers are done, but what I would say is if you aren't going to accept that responsibility, who in that client's life is going? If their CFP isn't going to make sure they have the answer to all these, who is? Who is? And that's my challenge to you. So you can see what this says is, do I want to donate my body? Do I want to be involved? What kind of services do I want? And by the way, this isn't fun stuff, is it? But it's important. And I guess I want to share one other thing about my mom. When that all happened, I've got a mother-in-law who's now like 84. And she's in good health. But my mom passed at 58, and I got a mother-in-law who's 84. And guess what? We didn't know her answers either. So with her permission, in about a month after my mom's death, me and my wife's sister, sat down with their mother, and we got all of these answers. And it was a little bit uncomfortable, but it demonstrated leadership, and it's what's in the best interest of our family. And there's no mother or father alive who wants to put their kids or their family in a position of disadvantage by not having. So now I feel I'm close to laying it on two things. I can't see the responses of you yet, so I'm moving. Pallbearers. By the way, would pallbearers be good opportunities for introduction? Pallbearers are important to these individuals. When we get introductions to other individuals in the form of referrals, how important is a high trust relation? So once again, these could be good introductions. And what about your obituary? Where do you want it posted? Any personal bequest? So you can see that this is pretty robust when you think. Here's that survivor check. The interesting thing about death, if you've seen it recently or been involved, is that everyone's sort of walking around with a chemical imbalance. And I did some research when my mom died, and what I found was that people have to make something like 50 decisions in 3 or 4 days after. And those decisions are made in a time when we have a chemical imbalance in our brain due to this death that happened. And it's the worst time to have to answer those. And if we don't have, sort of a treasure map, for lack of a better term, of where is everything and how can we execute this when we're putting our family in position. So the survivor check is real. And then that sort of wraps up. So what you can see is if we start with this, then we can have some wonderful conversations. And one of those wonderful conversations needs to be, how do we fund these goals, right? And so at the end of the day, in order to actually place life insurance, you have to get agreement on how much life insurance is needed. Now, there's a number of ways to do that, and this is just one, but this is a very easy one-page calculation. And you can see that it's separated between income. So what is our survivor income? Do I need additional income for any other reason? Okay. And then, by the way, let's back out, if available, survivor spouse's income. Right? So what income do we need minus what income do we have? Then is there any one-time lump sums that we want? Funeral expenses, debt, college, etc. Right? And then what other assets and insurance do we have? So there's more than one way to do this. I tend to like to use, the income side of things. People understand better that they need to replace their income. So I tend to talk about what income do we need to replace and figure out what the present value is. But I'm not married to either of these structures, and there's more than two ways to happen. But what I want you to hear is the key is, if they have these needs and want these answers, we ask them, how are they going to fund these? People don't need life insurance for life insurance. They need it to fund their goal. And that usually means present value of the future income needed to achieve their goal. And that's really the kind of conversation. So again, this is just an easy one-pager, and it's fillable, and it's a tool that can be available to you. So let's hop back. So again, that fact finder is very actionable, the agreement piece. And then this is demonstrating fiduciary capacity. Even if they don't implement the insurance, if you had this noted that this conversation was in the file and you had needs analysis, that would go a long way. And there's a question about the document in a fillable version. It actually is fillable as it sits. So yeah, and we'll send this material out to you. Okay, so now if we have that conversation and we get agreement on the death benefit, well, now we have some opportunities to take action in a very quick way. There's at least 3 accelerated underwriting programs that are available today. Candidly, there's more than that. And by the way, I'm fully expecting more and more to come. So you've got Curian, North American, and Sagicor. All 3 of these companies have online capabilities for electronic application. We do not have to get wet signatures from our client, which means we don't have to shuffle that paper. We don't have to see them in person. We don't have to put a FedEx package together. And we do not need paramedical exams if they go through the accelerated process. Curian indicates 65% of applicants are going through that accelerated process, which means the other 35 are effectively kicked out of it, which means then they need a paramedical. So it certainly isn't perfect. I heard somebody call it young, healthy, and wealthy. You have clients, young, healthy, and wealthy, these programs are going to work really well. Hey, Andrew, do you want to chime in with a little more color on any of these programs? I know you're working on a couple of cases. What would you highlight here, and how do you view the ease of doing it?
Yeah, I think, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Yeah, when it comes to life insurance, we certainly have seen an uptick in life insurance, term insurance, and the demographics have been actually mid-50s and even upwards. Definitely, I think it's somewhat induced by this global pandemic, and we've seen a lot of term insurance being used for obvious reasons. Pricing standpoint, term insurance is still pre-pandemic pricing, so it's basically on sale, and we're not sure how much longer this may last. Seeing all kinds of communication carriers that they limiting certain product riders, or if the risk class is below a certain table, that coverage is going to be postponed. So this is the time right now to get those clients engaged to make sure that they do have proper coverage. People have maybe more time right now working from home that gives of answers, conversation, people great value add be sent out. Clients have that conversation, maybe, with spouses, the glass of wine at night. And certainly carriers are stepping up their e-app game and streamline underwriting game. So we now also made available e-app submission process virtually all the carriers using iPipeline. Our case managers also have a short data collection form for a number of carriers. So if you would rather just take down the information and then send that data collection form to U.S. advisors, we can certainly facilitate business that way. E-application delivery is becoming a thing of the future right now, and a lot of carriers have that implementation. So I would say, as it alluded to in the beginning, this kind of has pushed the industry to step up their streamline underwriting, streamline application submit process, and then streamline policy delivery process, which is obviously good for all.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah, thank you for those comments. I think what I would add is, I listened rather about a week ago from a top underwriter or a head underwriter, top insurance, and she made a statement about, I'm giving you all this information today at 1:27 and at 1:29. So I just want to note that we are seeing products being changed, eliminated, processes being improved. And so we're giving you the most recent data today. But as you might imagine, insurance companies, of course, are dealing with the law of large numbers, professional risk management. And we have a global pandemic that we're in, and they don't always know exactly how to look at it. So there can be a case where they might postpone, especially at older ages. Certainly if someone has been exposed to this COVID, et cetera. So understand that we're staying on top of this, but we're still kind of have a moving target. Back to what we said at the beginning, we can either say, hey, this is a moving target, we're not going to do anything to freeze up, or we're going to find where the opportunity is. And that's really, I think, what we're hoping that you get out of it, that there is opportunities out there, business is being written, and there is. All right. So, I'd like to see if anyone would like to chime in here with any questions or comments. I'm interested most in leadership. Right. Leadership is something that I think about all the time, and it's one of the highest. So I don't know, how are you leading and what conversations are you having, and where are you finding success? And really, what are you doing sort of on purpose? Right. I'd like to ask Mikhail, if you wouldn't mind chiming in a little bit. I know that you had a wonderful month last month, for example, and I know that you haven't frozen. What would you share with the group relative to this?
Hey there. Thanks, Rod. Yeah, happy to share what I have done and what's been successful, what's been working. So a couple of things I'm doing, and it's not stuff that we didn't already know that we should be doing, is maintaining constant contact with clients and over-communicating. Erring on the side of over communicating. Anytime anything scary happens, obviously our clients want to know, that they're still good, that their money's still good. And so what I'm doing is, doing a review of everyone's situation and rerunning the Money Guide Pro numbers to make sure that they're still on track, and how exactly has this affected them in terms of their long-term plan. That gives us an opportunity to identify even what kind of shortfall there might be in their situation if one of them passed away, and what are their dependent needs in that case. Another thing I'm doing is I'm an institutional advisor, so I work with Congressional Federal Credit Union and Library of Congress Federal Credit Union. So I'm having them send out a letter or email to a targeted group of members to offer financial planning services, you know, to get just try to get in front of more people. And there's a copy of that we put together that everybody can have if they want their credit union to send out a letter or email as well. And then did you want me to share the fixed index annuity strategy that we talked about?
Yeah, I think that really would be great. I mean, obviously we're talking about opportunities in life insurance, but that's only because, you know, we have 45 minutes. So I know you've had a lot of success on that side. So why don't you share what that was?
Yeah, so real quickly, I mean, you had asked me to share because I had a big month last month. And one of the things that I've been doing is using fixed indexed annuities to satisfy a good portion of my clients' RMD requirements. So, for example, I have a client who had $400,000 in an IRA at the end of 2019, and it was in a Schwab IRA that I was managing for him. He's in his late 70s, by the way. We put $250,000 into a fixed index annuity with Protective, and it offers a 7.15% guaranteed annual withdrawal, which satisfied a huge portion of his RMD requirement for his IRA money. And that allowed us to, proportionally speaking, not have to take as much from what is left in his IRA at Schwab. And so, and I don't want to make this too long for our time here today, but I just want other people to know that there can be value in looking into those fixed index annuity strategies. Even though rates have gone down, there are still some good strategies out there that can be.
Great. No, I appreciate you sharing that. I know many of you know that I really believe strongly in the idea of consideration. Right. And what I hear from Cale more than anything is that he's considering where the guarantees effectively from the professional money manager and professional risk manager called the insurance, they can do things that maybe we can't do. And should we consider whether or not that should be part of the overall plan to fund our goals so that we have the answers which include how are we going to retire and not outlive our money. So I think that's a really good example. I really appreciate you sharing. George, I want to bring you in. For those of you who don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
Rod, can I just interject a couple things what Mikhail just said there?
Please.
One, the letter that he just mentioned, you'll be getting it. It'll be in our weekly. Jessica will be putting it in our weekly newsletter that you get on Fridays or Monday mornings, but generally. And we've got retail advisors on phone as well, so it can be changed very easily to send out to your clients. And he mentioned the segmentation. Great. It's great for those who are retired or are looking to retire, and offering them that free plan to do the plan. Now on retail, you might not. That's up to your discretion. But I think the timing is very, very good. People are unsettled. They don't know if they're on track to still achieve those goals. So I'd encourage all of you to take a look at that and reach out to your client. More later.
That's beautiful. Philip, since I have you, why don't you share, I know you sent out to this group some really good stuff on leadership, but what would be the one or two things that you would chime in on how you're leading, doing things intentionally? What would you bring to this?
Well, I would just echo what Mikhail said. Like Dan Sullivan, the strategic coach. I did a session for Chosen Frozen, and it was from a Merrill Lynch study. And statistically, they did over 2,300 surveys, and 1,800 of those approximately from 100,000 to 1 million portfolios, and then the other 429 or something were 1 million plus. And they asked them. This was after 9/11. I still say it's a crisis, same situations occurring. How many of you heard from your advisors within 2 weeks? 70, 1 in 5, 20%. Then they asked them, well, geez, what do you want to talk about? They just want to talk about how they're feeling. third thing was, what should they be doing short and long term? And then the other piece that they said, well, are you going to be investing in the next year? 78% said they would. Then they asked them the inevitable question, will you be investing with the advisor who did not call? 99% said they would not. So my point of this, I think, this is a great opportunity for, as you kicked it off, Rod, times of crisis, there's opportunity. And the opportunity here is to actually not just take care of your existing clients by calling them, relaxing them, reassuring them they're going to be okay by redoing the plan and actually, how their assets are doing. But secondly, find out, you hear value statements of other people, hey, I really appreciate you reaching out. Denise has done a great job doing. She sent out thinking of you letters. Since she called them up. But if you hear value statements, one or two friends that could also benefit from this. Last piece I'll just say on this one is there's the 4 cornerstone smart dollar allocation strategies. First cornerstone is risk management. Right now you should be starting off conversations on that risk management piece. Then second cornerstone is that cash reserves. Third is the 2 to 5 years, and then fourth cornerstone is 5+ years. You won't need the money. I would just get back to the basics and have these conversations, starting with the risk management, as you pointed out here, Rod. And with that, I'm complete. I'm conscious of the time, and don't want to take any of George. Give it back to George.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So George Steele, not the infamous George the Animal Steele, by the way, if you remember that old record. But we're very happy to have him on the team. I think we coordinated the exact right time to have him come on right before the global pandemic. So if you don't know George, now you do know. And George, why don't you give us 1 or 2 thoughts on what kind of conversations you're having, where are you living, what are you doing, what would you add for the group?
Well, thanks, Rod. Hello to everyone. Back to the life insurance just a bit, because I don't want anyone to be left with the impression that everything's moving toward a computerized and accelerated system, because those systems, yes, work 65% of the time, but there are humans and underwriters behind them. And just recently, just this week, we had a spouse, our husband and wife with a small child in the Chicago area. Spouse went quick. The wife, in this case, went quickly through the underwriting. They used the right-of-way from North American, but the husband's application got tied up a bit due to some medication. A medical exam was scheduled, but naturally, with the times and the concerns being, especially in a high-density breakout area, he was resistant to doing the medical exam. Well, the net is, we were able to work with the advisor, with the underwriter, who showed a sensitivity to that concern, gathered physicians' reports, and as they're coming together right now, we believe they'll be able to waive the exam. So I think there's a sensitivity to the time we're all dealing with, and that comes with relationships and working as a team through what could be obstacles here and being sensitive. And that's my motto, try to see things through other people's eyes and concerns, as you all do, and you're the quarterbacks, and in challenging times, everybody's leaning in. And I think what an opportunity to call a wide range of plays, and your kind of calm and skilled leadership that makes the game. So I'm very appreciative of the people I've come to know, and look forward to building those relationships.
That's beautiful. No, I like those comments about leaning in, and what your comments made me think of Philip again, where he says we need to approach things with bent knee. And I think that's the key here. We do have to be flexible, but we have to be ready, right? And you're ready to move left or move right, and ready to demonstrate leadership. So I'd like to open it up to anyone else on the call. Does anyone else have something that they would like to share about the conversations they're having or what they're doing? If so, just unmute yourself and just step right up. I'm going to give us a little bit of a pause here. See if anyone wants to. Okay, Well, then I'm
Denise,
going to
are
move
you
on.
on? Let me ask, is Denise on? Can you share what you've been doing and the client's reactions to your calls and the thank you notes you sent out?
Hi, Philip. Yeah, I'm on the spot.
Hi, Denise.
Hi. Well, we've just gone through so many transitions as a team and an office here. But I finally had a chance to talk to Philip, and I mentioned I'm sending out thinking of you cards. And it started actually because my friend's store is very limited right now during the pandemic, and I wanted to support her store. So I bought some thinking of you cards that were special to a local artist in Minnesota. But anyways, I sent them, I separated my client list, and I went through who would like a personal touch that's just not a phone call. Some people like having mail in their mailbox when they don't have visitors. So I've been sending out cards every week to clients, letting them know that I'm thinking of them, and I got it all compliant, approved, submitted it. And I have gotten nothing but wonderful response and phone calls of thank you for thinking of me. It was so nice to have a card, and that just opened up the conversation even more on top of my phone calls. So it's just a different medium to reach to your clients, and especially a lot of my clients are older, and they just appreciate a handwritten note in a handwritten envelope with a real stamp, not something or generic, just a real heartfelt touch. So I've had a lot of
Love that. Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, I hear that being a focus on the relationship, which is clear. And then the idea is nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care, and that's a wonderful demonstration of that. It goes back to what Philip's talking about, that after September 11th, they didn't necessarily want to know how their portfolio was doing. They wanted to be asked how they're feeling. So I think that's really wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Would you share anything else to me?
Yeah, I've had time to call the others that I didn't send cards to, and you're right. The number one thing that we talk about is how they're feeling and how they're doing. Again, I have an older client, and they're stuck. They're isolated. Nobody's really talking to them. They can't even help. So very few of them have asked me, how's my portfolio doing? Because they've been through this before. They've seen it before. They know it's going to happen. We've been talking to them for the last year to 2 years of correction. So they really just wanted to know that someone cared.
It's wonderful. I mean, I'm kind of a softie, you know me, so that really does pull on my heartstrings. Philip knows me, but in a professional way, that is such a demonstration of leadership, truly. So thank you for sharing that. That's a great model for all. I have a few more items to wrap up. We will wrap up soon. Is there anyone else who would like to share? So from a call to action basis, right, what are we going to do with all? And at the very end of the day, unless you do something on purpose or with intention, you're not going to do anything. And I don't mean to point a finger. It's just not going to happen. And so we've got to do something. Maybe you could hop on a call with me or Andrew or George. We can pair you with a specialist, myself or someone else. I'm going to show you the toolbox again. And we've got a financial planning toolbox that has everything we need to intentionally integrate insurance into our practice. This call, for example, is being recorded, will be logged in. I'll help you put together a miniature business plan. Listen, I know that my 2020 production isn't going to be as good as I thought it was going to be, and I'm imagining that all of you think that too. But I don't have to throw the business plan away. There's still time. We can still make it happen. And if your investment business is going to be down 20% this year, which from my seat seems to be a reasonable planning number, I can promise you that with intention, we can make up a 20% loss with insurance plan this year. I know we can because we've done it. Philip calls it recent relevant experience. I've been working with wealth advisors for about 15 years. And generally, we can find 10 to 30% of gross dealer concession inside of it. So please reach out to us. We'd be happy. So I want to show you a couple of. All right, so here's the financial planning toolbox. Okay, the U.S. Advisors Insurance Planning. And some of you have seen it as everything you need to integrate. The way we have this thing broken down is we have to identify the people that we may want to talk to. At the end of the day, we have to figure out who to talk to and how to talk to. So maybe it's that a gift of answers, but maybe it's not. But this is what our team, Andrew, George, and I would help. Who are we going to talk to? Then we have to figure out how are we going to talk to them, which is really in the positioning. So how are we going to talk? What is that going to be? What's the context? What's the tone? Then once we do that, we ultimately have to implement that business. And we shared with you a couple of simplified ways. You can either implement that yourself, or you can possibly be introduced to a joint work session. So if you haven't seen this toolbox, please pay attention. We do have a bunch of our coaching calls that we put together here down in our coaching call library. So you, as you're sitting here, I know even George, right? Part of what he's doing is he's going through with it. So we have these things logged, and we have a nice library to be able to help you move. And the other thing I wanted to show you was the actual PDF of the Scary Time. We can send this out to you if you want to share it with your networks or your clients or your family. I shared this with my family. To me, I think this is gold. So I gave you the highlights, but here's the manual. It's 4 pages. He gives his own thoughts on each of these numbers. Right? So I was really giving you my view on it. But I just want you to know that this is available, and we'll send it out to you after the call along with the report. And so with that, that's all of my prepared remarks. We do have a few more minutes at the top of the hour. Andrew, do you have anything else you'd like to add, or does anyone else have anything that they have questions, comments, or concerns on? Please step forward.
No, Rod, I was just thinking, what Denise said is, heard that actually from a few advisors that they've taken this time to mail out handwritten letters, more again, stating that the advisors are thinking of clients in this difficult time. This is, again, where you can maybe add that gift of answers document. Say, hey, I'm thinking of you. This is something you might find useful with your spouse, your children, to make sure that your house is in order, so to speak. If you have any questions, or if I can be of any assistance to help you with any of those answers, by all means, lean on me. So that's maybe another way to incorporate that document.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I was going to say, Rod, piggyback on. I think that's excellent. One of our key roles is to help clients plan for that certainty of uncertainty. And you can be certain, particularly those probably 50 plus, and the virus is going to affect everyone, but we do know there's a group of individuals or segment that are at higher risk. Well, right now, a lot of people have a lot of time on their hands, and this is one of those things that the tool that you're mentioning and have shown everyone is one of those things a lot of people put off. So I think it's a very, very opportune time. I can tell you, I'm going to look at it. I updated my 5 wishes already. And Rod, that was my question. How does this differ from the 5 wishes? And the 5 wishes I know is approved in 32 states. This is a little more detailed, but can you expound on that? Because so many of our advisors
have
sure 5 wishes too.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm green in Philip speak. I'm green on the 5 wishes, which means I agree. I think it's great. I almost don't have a preference, so they really get us to the same spot. In my opinion, the real benefit of both of those documents is a receptacle to have those kind of snapshot answers in one space or one spot. But the biggest opportunity is the conversations that will naturally outflow from that. Tell me more about that. Why is that important? What have you done on that thing? Do you need it reviewed? Right? Do we have that in our financial plan? So Philip, my opinion is those documents could be used, you could use one or use the other. And I guess since we brought that up, why don't we send out the 5 wishes also when we send out the follow-up?
Rod?
Yes.
Oh, Rod, can
Yes.
are you going to send out the fillable version of that?
Yes,
The
we
5
will.
wishes?
I'll make sure he has the fillable. I'll make sure he has
Of
the
both.
fillable. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Of this document that you just went through. Yeah. I think it'd be awesome to be able to send clients a fillable version of it that they can fill in any information that they can provide for us and send it back to me and keep it in fillable state so that as their lives kind of evolve and we want to update, you don't have to do it all over again,
Right.
I love it. To be honest, I don't know if this one's fillable, but I'll find out. The 5 wishes is, and I thought you were talking about the fact finder in the chat, Kale, so I apologize. But I'll find out if we have a fillable portion.
That would be awesome.
But even
Thanks.
even on that, as you're doing that, the other one, the John Hancock one, that's fillable. As you're reaching out to the young, your different segments here, that's another great piece to send out. Look, they're at home. It's time to take a look at your risk management needs and plan for that certainty of uncertainty. Why don't you just plug in these numbers and, oh, by the way, hey, here's a calculator. Here's an app where if you want to determine your amount and you can get an idea on the prices. We have those great. Why don't you just mention the mobile app here as well, Rod, and then they can call you for further enhancements. If they need to talk about it in greater detail of the actual dollar amount. But it's a good way to get them started and something to do during this quiet time.
Yeah, I very much agree with you, Philip. Don't know where that stat comes from, but yeah, I agree with you. Again, we got to start somewhere. So what I find of all things, there's no such thing as a new idea. In order for us to talk about something or have a process, we have to be comfortable with it. So what I would leave you with is if you're comfortable with exactly what we're suggesting, then do it. And if you aren't, take what you are comfortable with, drop what you don't, and we can help you refine that so that we can take action. Philip mentioned a mobile app. And yes, we have a mobile app, and this just speaks to how easy it can be to do business. And so if you're not aware of our mobile app, you should reach out to Andrew or George and get you up to speed set up. So with that, we're 2 minutes to the top of the hour, and I'm going to close this call up. So I appreciate you guys taking the time, and we'll get an email out to you in the next couple of days with follow-up material from this. So with that, I want to thank you. I'll put my contact info up here one last time. If you want to call me directly or reach out to George or reach out to Andrew, really appreciate you guys and make it a great day. Okay? Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you all, and Mikhail, Denise, thank you, and George and Andrew for your insights, and Rod for putting this all together with the team.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you all. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.